Hello, everybody, and welcome to the January 5th, 2023 meeting of the Asheville Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. Calling the meeting to order. I'm going to do a roll call vote of our members that are here. Margie?
Margie McCaskey, Weaver Cook, I'm here.
Scott?
Scott Adams, here.
Chris Day?
Chris Day, here.
Paul?
Paul Heathman is here.
Tara?
Tara Irby is here.
Brian?
Brian Metzman, here.
Nuena?
And Wayna Smith is here.
And so Andy just came in.
Hey, Andy Barnett is here.
Okay.
And late here.
Thanks, and I'm Chair Barry Bialik, and obviously I'm here. Let's see. First up on our agenda is the approval of our minutes from our December meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review them? If so, do I have a motion to accept?
Motion to accept the minutes from December 5th.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much. Next up, so we're going to set an election for chair and vice chair for our next meeting. Currently, I'm serving as chair. Margie's serving as vice chair, and we had some discussion at the last meeting about those who may be interested. So I don't know if there's I don't know if there's any actually formal process other than is there anyone, I guess first I would ask if there's anyone who would like to be considered like to be considered for one of the roles of chair or vice chair.
That's one way to do it. Or you could, if there's anybody who knows they're definitely not going to serve,
Yeah.
or can't serve, or won't, whatever.
Yeah.
They're definitely not putting themselves up. They could volunteer to take nominations, and in the next month, over the next few weeks, people can think about it and submit their name. You can either submit your own name or nominate
Sure.
somebody else, and then
We
Just
also
wanted to
talked
see-
about co-chairing.
Yeah. Basically, I first would want to see who has interest in leadership roles. That way, then maybe we can have a discussion of how that might look. Because traditionally, a lot of these times, like the vice chair would move into the chair role. Margie has concerns about the time, just the time commitment she'll have with work. So some of the normal paces, the normal process might not be there. So I just wanted to and we've had some discussion at the last meeting. I know Paul was remote present, but I just wanted to get an idea first, like who has interest. That way we can then figure out what process and whether it looks like a chair, whether it's co-chairs, vice chairs, chairs, 3 people. So I think seeing who has interest in it would be helpful so we can figure out next steps. Just for knowledge, like when I was appointed, I was nominated. I did not put my name in this. Just to give you an idea. So I'd prefer to have people who know they might have interest in it rather than we start nominating people. So
Barry, you set the bar so high as chair. So.
It's the long tradition of being voluntold.
exactly. What's that? No, I cannot. So my term will be. My term on the committee will be up in September. So so what we're trying to do is kind of set new committee leadership. That then there's time to run it while I'm still here before I go bye-bye.
I'm more than willing to do co-chairing.
Instead of gavels, I should have given people hats and you can throw them in the middle here. Or we're going to play Duck, Duck, Goose. Okay.
there are a few people absent
Yeah.
today, and I don't know if they might have some interest.
Yeah,
They
we
might be
discussed it with Babs, and she expressed maybe some interest in co-chair, not vice or by
I
herself.
don't think she is. I met with Babs.
You did?
Yeah. I mean, I think I can let her speak. She's not here, but I think she's concerned about her time. Like, she might have some travel coming up that she's concerned about time commitments. Is what she shared with me when we met. So
Okay.
Okay. I guess we'll.
Is there anybody who would be willing to just be the depository of additional names? I mean, we have Margie's interest, and maybe maybe there's somebody who's willing to reach out to
I'd be happy to do that.
David Bartholomew and Emily and, yeah, okay, thanks. Is that okay? I just did that.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, no, I need some help on this. Or I'm gonna start pointing fingers. Okay. I guess we'll come back to this, but at least it's good to know what hands might be up. Next up, we have presentation on the agenda from the Land of Sky Association of Realtors, from their Affordable Housing Committee presentation, and I'll let you, so Athena, are you gonna? Okay, let you come up and share what y'all have been doing.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Athena Digard. I am the chair of the Affordable Housing Committee at Land of the Sky Association of Realtors. We've been really trying to work on kind of creating more presence and being more available and connecting people in the area with resources they need around housing in general, and especially in the vein of affordable housing. A lot of the things we do on a regular, ongoing, yearly basis. We make targeted gifts to local organizations that work in the field of affordable housing. We try and have volunteer days with Heart and Hammer, Western North Carolina, or Mountain Housing, or Habitat, as often as we can. This past year, those opportunities have been kind of few and far between. We have put in support for the Asheville Buncombe Community Land Trust with providing them platforms to be able to share information about themselves, and have helped them to gain grant money that has allowed them to work on marketing and promotional materials. We've also created a partnership with Thrive Asheville and their landlord-tenant partnership, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, in trying to help connect landlords with folks who are in need of federal housing monies, so that, you know, we have more options, and hopefully we can get more landlords who have properties to join in these partnerships and create some more affordable inventory, because we're so low on inventory, and affordable inventory and inventory that's accessible to people who have housing choice vouchers is scarily low in that inventory. We are working on some things that we feel like can go a long way. We have in the past also done our annual housing fair, which was kind of re-resurrected post-COVID this year. We had about 30 different community organizations that were there to share information about their programs. And along with that, we also had updated our 2022 Affordable Housing Guide, which we have available digitally, as well as physical copies in both English and Spanish. As for that resource upcoming, we are hoping that we can expand that guide. Right now, it's like a 4-fold flyer type setup, and you need a magnifying glass to read it. So we're hoping that this year we can get that transitioned into more of a booklet format, hopefully have it set up in the middle that we've got a map that shows where these neighborhoods are, where people can apply, and also have an overlay with the transit system so that people can look. In previous years, when we had our housing fair, we would do kind of a driving tour of some of these projects and neighborhoods. And as some more of these opportunities and apartment complexes and neighborhoods expand, it's a good opportunity that people can do their own driving tour, and they can get places, and we can take a lot of that kind of upfront work of trying to get to these resources kind of handled on the front end for people. Another thing that we have discussed, we do have a website for our housing fair, but that's something that only is applicable that one time a year when we're setting up for it and we're advertising it and we're marketing it, is making available a separate entire website that is gonna be something along the lines of like affordablewnc.com or something like that, that we can have these housing guides available, that we can have a year-round resource that people can just go to. And initially, we had Zach Penland, who is one of our members, creating kind of a housing roadmap. And when we all came together this last meeting, we said, but getting into housing is not always linear, and we can't make the assumption that someone's goal is homeownership, when right now they're just trying to find a stable, supportive place to live, or they're trying to fix their credit, or they're dealing with things like recovery or justice involvement. And so we're working really hard right now to kind of define what we want in this website, and rather than having it be a roadmap or a process, be a needs-based, I need this, or a decision tree, so that people, no matter where they are, whether it's trying to avoid foreclosure or needing information about renters' rights, that people can come to this one resource, we can point them there, and depending on what the situation is, we're giving them the resources they need and the places they need to call and the people they need to contact to meet those needs. And yeah, so I think that's going to be a really good thing. We did discuss also potentially, aside from just having that digital presence, trying to get information out and have it maybe as a resource available when people call 211, that they kind of already have, you know, a pool of different resources for different things, and it's a place that hopefully we can drive people there. And it also serves as a really good, would serve as a great resources for landlords that are trying to get involved, so that they know the organizations to reach out to find out about landlord-tenant law or partnership programs, and really kind of meet all of those needs. My friend Tommy back here is going to start working, aside from just having the one housing fair per year, we're considering doing quarterly workshops that come to local community centers and things like that, so that we can give education around financial health and renters' rights and the home buying process and credit and all of these different things that people need, and they're not having to wait. And so we're hoping to create some partnerships with the city and maybe community centers to be able to come in and have some of these topics covered with folks on a more regular basis. We have debated, and I don't know where we're going on this, maybe creating some sort of middle or high school level financial education workshop. We've had recently junior achievement and Mad City Money and different programs that have happened in the past that just really don't happen anymore. And I feel like if we're sending young people out into the world, whether they're college bound or not, there are certain skills that financially it helps people to know about. I've got my own just grown kids that, they're faced with a 20-page lease, and they're like, really? Like, can they really just kick me out for this, or they can blame me for this? And a lot of leases are so favorable toward landlords that they really are scary to young people who haven't had any connection with this type of decision making. So I feel like being able to get people educated earlier is a great thing. We have David Goldstein coming March 3rd, and he's a representative of the Joint Ownership Entity, which is a New York-based housing coalition. And we were thinking that, we have a lot of resources here, but we don't really have a coalition of all those resources so that the right hand knows what the left is doing. And if we can get a coalition together, that we have all of our organizations coming and pitching in and knowing who does what and being able to have those collaborative relationships, that hopefully we can get more done, and it's not individual organizations or committees governmentally that are kind of doing their own thing, and maybe we can get more done if we are finding a way to work as a team rather than everybody just focusing from their own perspective. And I think the last thing is we previously before COVID, we were the only secular organization to take part in Room in the Inn every year through Homeward Bound. We very much enjoyed that work. And being able to kind of take some of the load off of our local churches during the holiday season, and we would have the women for Room in the Inn for a week, the week of Christmas. With COVID, that program has gone away. We don't think it'll come back. But there are 3 churches that have started what they're calling the Asheville Ecumenical Shelter, that right now is 3 churches. They're holding, they've got their unhoused clientele for a month at a time. And we have reached out to them to see if we can partner with them again at Christmas time and be able to take some of that burden off of them and to work with them as they try to go from being a 3-church, 3-month out of the year event or organization to potentially stretching that out for the full year and helping them to meet some of those goals. So, I don't know, any questions? It's a lot. We're working on a whole lot of things.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is, I have a couple of questions. I know there's been, we've had some discussion outside of this about the Board of Realtors starting kind of the affordable housing designation, and there being maybe a CE class for realtors about that. I just wanted to kind of see if you can speak about what's going on with that, and then also where we can support that with maybe some content,
Yeah. That's something that I personally feel would be a really great thing, and I'd probably be the first person to sign up to do it, because this affordable housing is a passion of mine and something that I have been personally affected by, and affordable housing has been life-changing for me. I feel like it is a wonderful idea, and we have a workforce housing specialist designation that's sponsored by, that's a statewide certification, and it has a lot of those, the components of knowing about special types of financing and affordable housing options and things like that. But I feel like there are not a whole lot of my colleagues that really get involved in the affordable housing end of things. And that I feel like it might not really be super beneficial to kind of reinvent the wheel when we already have a statewide thing. That I think it's a great idea, but I don't know how really overreaching and beneficial it would be, and that maybe putting our efforts elsewhere where we can, I feel like maybe make more of a difference might be a more prudent thing.
Can that be, I know, I'm sure I felt Andy cringe over there when the word was said for
Yeah.
workforce housing designation.
Yeah.
Is there a way to, and is that like, because that hasn't necessarily been active in this market for a while, is that right, that designation? There might be a way maybe to expand on that designation to include more encompassing housing, and then to see how we can support that? Because I know in some of our discussions, there's the helping for affordable housing, but then there's
Yeah.
also the how brokers and realtors can help with investor buyers to understand about
Yeah.
multifamily affordable housing, and how there's some training from that to understand. Because there's so many programs that the city has and that the state has that maybe we can help connect in that for more investment buyers. But anyway, I appreciate the dialogue to connect, and then I think we would love to support that and to see
Yeah.
how there can be an expanded designation that, helps
Yeah,
bring them into the fold.
And I think there's definitely value to anyone who has kind of that statewide designation to kind of dig more in locally to what the city and county incentives are, and what resources we have available for ourselves and our clients and investors and landlords. But I don't really have a clear vision right now of what that could maybe look like.
Yeah.
Athena, do you
Maybe
have
just
a
an additional
list?
component.
Do you have a list of the people that have that designation throughout the state, the real estate?
It's available on the North Carolina level. I don't I mean, I could probably, I know who to contact to get that list, but yes, it is attainable. Actually, if you go to maybe NC Realtors, you can search for an agent, and you can specifically search agents with certain designations and certifications. So just any general consumer can go on the website and say, I'm looking for a Realtor, and I want someone who has a specific certification or designation. It'll bring up a list locally.
I wonder if the framework of, I mean, I just think I'm a broker, and when I do my CEs every year, like I'm having to like figure out online what to do, and I wonder like even if maybe one of the first steps could be a joint like creating content for CE class about affordable housing. That then has some local information, because I mean I probably imagine most brokers would want to take that just for the interest, and that might help get more people involved.
Can you repeat the name of the speaker in the organization you mentioned?
David Goldstein.
Okay.
He helped form the organization, and it's Joe, Joint Ownership Entity. NYC, Joe NYC.
I had a question about the response that you're seeing to the Affordable Housing Guide. I feel like we spend a lot of time thinking about, how low the vacancy rate is and how oversubscribed some of our programs are. It would almost seem like a source of frustration to drop something in somebody's hand that is in a resource guide when many of those resources might not be
tapped out and not necessarily.
So I'm just wondering if you're hearing
Yeah.
that feedback. Is that a struggle that you run into?
It's definitely something that I feel like a lot of folks, I'm constantly on Facebook hearing people say, I need some resources, and I'm like, let me PM you, and here's this thing. I think one of the benefits to it is, and I know these units are scarce, but a lot of folks don't even realize that there are, say, apartment complexes that when they're built, they're, as part of their zoning, they have to have so many affordable units. And a lot of people don't realize that, hey, this really nice apartment complex over here that's way too expensive for me to live in, but they have affordable units and people just don't know about them. And they don't know that you can call and say, hey, do you have any affordable units that are available? And I feel like at least it is one central document that if people are going to be getting on wait lists and they're going to be applying, at least they've got that right there in one spot to know what those resources are instead of bouncing around from website to website to website to website.
Athena, I would just say that I thank you for that flyer. I've probably sent out 1 million of those copies to my clients.
Aw.
And I was looking for another entity that I'm going to
That makes me feel really good.
Yeah. So I would say, yes, the frustration is there real.
Yeah.
The wait list. But
Yeah.
what I would do is, encourage the clients to just call and get on those waiting lists.
Yeah.
And like you said, they don't have to bounce from the websites to websites and
Yeah.
different entities. So having it in one space is
Yeah.
a good thing. But yes, I always tell them, I'm sorry for the font. It's so small. You need a magnifying glass. But besides that, I think it's
Yeah,
really good.
I feel like we wanted to kind of change that format this year, but with some of the staffing changes at the city, like it was not, we weren't able to get that done this year, but we're hoping that for 2023, we can get that expanded. And I think part of the benefit of that is that people who very often feel like they're in a hopeless situation and there aren't options, it really does give you a sense of people are really trying. There are organizations and people and our government entities that really are trying to figure out some answers for these issues that are very complex. And having been in that place before of not knowing what the options were or if there were safe, affordable places to have my family, just knowing and finding out that those resources were there and that people and organizations were trying and they cared, like that in itself just kind of goes a long way to know that people are really trying to get their feet on the ground and their hands in the dirt and kind of sow possibilities and growth of resources and make that available.
One more thing, Adina, have you thought about maybe doing a different type of flyer? What we have discussed many times on this committee is that, there's resources for certain levels of, but the working class, those of us who work but are over the income for affordable housing or about to get kicked out of affordable because the income is exceeding, we need those resources. We need some resources for the working class of Asheville.
Yeah, filling that gap. People feel like it's a gap, and I tell people all the time, it's not a gap. You can be 10 cents over a limit for housing or childcare or food or medical care, and then that creates thousands of dollars a month based on 10 cents, and it's a chasm. It's not a gap. It's not a falling through the gap. It's a chasm, and it takes a lot to get from one side of that to the other. And, I feel like the whole working class kind of, that is that missing middle type situation that kind of gets overlooked, because kind of the same thing with like the need for deeply, deeply affordable housing in terms of the unhoused, like that's a whole different animal from workforce stuff that has to be approached in a completely different way. So I feel like that's part of what maybe creating a local coalition can kind of do, is help us to fill some of those gaps where housing is concerned.
Do you think that the landlords in apartment complexes would be willing to report availability, say, once a month, so it would simplify the search process?
I think that would be a fantastic idea.
Do you think they would give the data? Do you have any insight into that?
I really don't, unfortunately. I think that's a really good question. I think it would be fabulous if we had a resource that told us who might have availability and who doesn't.
At least most of these apartment complexes track availability immediate 30 days, 60 days, 90 days.
Yeah.
Because they know, like, people have given notice.
Yeah.
So they all track it.
Yeah.
It's at least the sophisticated, multi-unit apartment
I think the
complexes.
difficult thing is when you're looking at these really large apartment complexes that have so many units overall, and then they have 4 affordable units. And
So we really need to have them report on the affordable units.
Yeah.
Or depending on how we define affordable, we could make it up to, 110 or 20% of median income. And so that we could, get a sense for what's out there in inventory, which is one of the missing pieces we have for tracking affordability, I think, as a community, is just knowing, if I need a 2-bedroom unit, how many are available today?
Yeah.
Is there one, or is there 100?
Yeah. I think another similar problem is that in this area, property managers don't use the MLS for rentals at all. I've got 2 adult children that both lived in Charlotte at one point, and I could hop on the MLS because we share the same system and send them hundreds of listings of rentals. And because our inventory is so low here, and because most property managers can just rent them out on word of mouth to whoever's moving out, hey, do I have a friend that wants this apartment? Like, it never even gets out to, a lot of properties just don't even get out to the general public because we don't use the MLS in that way in this area. So that's kind of another downfall, that people come to me to look for rentals, and the best I can do is give them an email template I have that's got like 30 or 40 different property management companies on there, because we don't use our MLS as a centralized location for available rentals.
Is that an anomaly? Or is that, or I guess in larger markets, is that more common?
I think it just depends on the different markets. I just feel like it's not something that property managers feel like is really a necessary tool, and it's just extra work in this particular area, because a lot of places can just be filled by word of mouth. So why expend the time, money, and energy to advertise and do MLS inputs when they've got people knocking down the door just trying to get into a place.
I'm pretty sure in
Yeah.
most large cities that this MLS sales and rentals are listed in the same place.
Yeah.
That's a very common thing in most.
Yeah, most
Major
places
cities.
it's used for everything, but I feel like here in Asheville, it's just, I mean, maybe it is an anomaly, but I know that if at any given time, I can search any rental available in the MLS and I might pull up 5 listings. And they are typically upwards of $3,000 a month. So those are the ones that are going into the MLS. So.
I wonder if that's something that y'all can work on, because yeah, I mean, in the market here, I'd say most real estate brokers are trained for real estate sales, they're not necessarily trained for real estate rentals, where in other larger markets, there's firms that are trained for real estate rentals. And I wonder if that's something that, y'all can look at opening up, like because I've never really seen any of the brokerages recruiting for leasing agents. Yeah. But I wonder if that, if helping to get the people would then get more landlords involved.
Yeah, I know there are 1 or 2 agents locally that they specifically say, hey, I'll work on finding you a rental, but it's just kind of a hard thing to do because those aren't making it into the MLS, so.
Sasha, one question I've got. So from a zoning perspective, when the 250-unit apartment complex is required to have 10% affordable or 20% affordable through their conditional zoning, the city have a database of those somewhere? And is that something that could somehow
We do,
translate
and we're
to?
working on, we're working on monitoring right now, so we monitor them every year. I will say, when I've called places, they generally always have a waiting list.
Right.
Like, they've got a waiting list for any affordable unit they have that opens up. They've got people lined up for them. And I'm not trying to kibosh any of these great
it's
ideas.
fine.
but it is
And
a
we've
reality.
collaborated on making sure that those neighborhoods that have that conditional zoning that creates those required affordable units, we've collaborated to make sure that those neighborhoods are in
Yes.
the affordable housing guide.
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't there talk, I remember I think we've had the talk here at this meeting about, because every rental has separate application fee, and there was talk about a centralized.
Common application.
Yeah, is that, who's leading that, and where is that in any process? I remember there's talk of there being more of a central, application that one person could pay the application fee once.
The only thing that I know of, and I've spoken with them recently, is the apartment complexes owned by Mountain Housing Opportunities through management, I think it's management partnership property management, that they will now let you, for one application fee, you can apply for 3 different neighborhoods, 3 different complexes.
Only if you pass the background checks. So
Okay.
If you don't pass the background checks, you cannot go to other units.
Okay.
So what I've always told my clients was at least go to one of the units if you could get a property manager on the phone to make an appointment.
Yeah.
But if you do the application, do that background check. Once you pass the background check, then you go to other units. But if you don't, you stop that process.
Okay.
And that's been the hindrance.
And again, that comes into kind of trying to bring in justice-involved folks and recovery, folks that are in recovery, because there are some special needs along those lines that, I mean, honestly, for me, I've known was a thing, but recently has kind of come a little more to the forefront of we need to make sure to include these populations because they do have a separate set of needs.
The group that was working on that common rental application project was Just Economics, and we can make that something that Connect Team follows up with them and just get a status update on where that is.
Yeah, that would be great because, I mean, it's a lot.
That would be very, it sounds like it'd be a very valuable resource. Okay. Cool, well, thank you, and let us know how we can assist, and, one other thing I thought when you were talking about maybe doing some quarterly workshops, if it gets to that, we should have some discussion. Right before COVID, our committee was talking about how we would like maybe once a quarter our meetings to be more evening meetings and be out in, maybe in a housing authority meeting space, so so we can access it. I wonder if that might be a way to, if when we have our meetings there, maybe that can be a time to where you have resources and workshops or something. But But I think it's, definitely something we as a committee, are interested in
Yeah.
adjusting our schedule and maybe we can see how we align.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Awesome.
all your efforts. It takes all of us. It really does.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
But it was so sobering. Even for one in the beer business. All right, next up on our agenda, we've got our work plan and parties discussion. We have a document that's shared that kind of is, sorry, the Chromebook just signed out, so.
Yes, so did mine.
Yeah, but I think, because I didn't print that one, but I think you had shared your kind of work.
Sorry. There's a Chromebook signed out on them.
Yeah, something out of the work plan.
Right, so at your retreat, we talked a little bit around, or maybe directly about this topic of, the purview of AHAC, what you're working on. The next agenda item is your annual report to City Council, and part of that report is two things. What are your policy recommendations to Council? And two, what are you planning on working on for the next year? So Barry and I discussed this and thought this discussion made sense first. And in your Chromebooks, Andy sent me just this morning like a draft suggested work plan, which is awesome. So we could even use that to help our discussion. And I dropped it into your materials folder, which you can access from these Chromebooks. I could pull it up on the screen, or we could talk about this in general. The other thing we had at the retreat, if you remember, and I could pull this up first if you like, was that kind of staff work plan for the next year. What we're planning on working on, which is, if I were going to quickly summarize, it's the wage policy revisions, looking at or working on an update to our affordable housing plan, and that may include hiring a consultant to kind of two parts, update our data, our housing needs assessment, all these numbers we keep talking about. We haven't done that for over 2 years for the city. And then really working with the community to focus on what are your top strategies? Are there things we're missing out on here in Asheville that we should be doing that are best practices? And what have we done that's worked well? So there's kind of an evaluation, data gathering, evaluation, and where do we go from here? The Housing Trust Fund scoring thing, Andy included in his matrix, his table, I'll say. Also something I think that, I feel like Luigi is the next thing coming, and then the affordable housing plan. Trying to remember what else was there.
Sorry, I've got it coming up, but
Yeah.
so I think I'm just trying to pull up the document that had your work.
So I don't know if you all know this, but when you have access to this folder, you have access to all your past files. Maybe, I don't know if you know that, but you can always go back in time.
Okay. So one of our thoughts on this, there was the staff work plan was in there for the year, and I thought it would be good for us to look at kind of our sort of lines with where they need input, that we can align ours with theirs. And let's see, documents are coming up. And then Andy, what I'll probably do, since you sent the document over and we're trying to pull it up, maybe I'll let you lead and kind of share your thoughts of where you came up with this, and I'll let you lead the discussion on this since you popped this in and I haven't had time to really review it.
Sorry for getting this out so late. I started working on it right after we had our retreat while all of our great thoughts were fresh in our mind, and then it got into that place that things go that aren't your regular work in the holiday season. So I tried to go back and revisit it. What I tried to do with this document that Sasha's pulling up now, it's in your folder as AHAC work plan draft, was to just take those. So this is obviously not fleshed out, but work planning tool that I've used that just kind of lays out who's responsible for things, when it needs to start, when it needs to be done, where it is, that we might use to track the things that we're doing. I didn't sequence any of the projects or tasks, but I do think it makes sense for us to sync those up with the timelines that are in the CD staff work plan for the year, so that we're making sure that we're doing things in a timely way. But I took the large projects that we identified in our retreat, and then also some of the things that we've been kicking around for a while, and started going through those projects and breaking them down into like, okay, well, what actually needs to happen for us to move these things forward in one way or the other. So the large projects being looking at the scoring on the Housing Trust Fund. That was the thing that we tabled coming out of the retreat, that we need to go back and revisit, particularly things like the bedroom, number of bedroom scores and those kinds of things. The Luigi policy update that's on the staff work plan, and really making sure that we've got we're doing a good job of gathering, performing our role of gathering community input to the staff's work around the Luigi policy. Updating the affordable housing strategies, the 2008 housing plan, city-owned land and kind of the land disposition policy, and also some of the active city-owned sites that were discussed at our retreat. And then we've been working for a while on kind of around the edges of easing zoning restrictions around mobile homes, and developing, if we can't use federal funds for mobile home repair, finding a way to fund mobile home repair at the local level, launching or relaunching, reimagining the stalled DPA program, down payment assistance program. I think the work that the Build Committee's been doing, kind of stress testing is my term for the regulatory barriers to affordable housing, just kind of working through the permit process system, the regulatory and entitlement program, process, and making sure that we know where the pain points are for developers and for city staff. And then for a while, it's been on our list to do something, to try to tailor affordable housing production incentives that work for smaller developers and smaller landlords. And then the piece that came up again at our retreat around the MSD and their ability to expand service within the city limits, and just figuring out a way to take some action on that. So working through our existing representation as a city on the MSD board, or potentially open seats on the MSD board, advocating for some sort of affordable housing focus within that decision-making body. So these were things that I felt like we have talked about, or we talked about in our retreat as projects that this committee would like to take on, that felt like they were within our purview. And then, like I said, the things that aren't in bold on this sheet were just me trying to plug in either things that we discussed or things that seemed like logical tasks that led up to the completion of those projects. And obviously you can see where I fleshed out some of the early ones in more detail than I fleshed out some of the later ones, but that's that we can continue to refine this at the task force work group level.
Barry, I'd like to add one thing. As you made reference, the last item you had on here, back in November, the city, as they always do, as we all applied for applications for this board, the city announced and had listed out the MSD role as one. And so just before the end of the year, I applied and reflected in my application that I was a member of AHEC with the intention of bringing to light in that position. So I have made an application for that, and I think that goes to council next week, maybe.
Yeah, I guess we're moving on the work plan right away.
It's always, they say, New Year's, like you should write things
Yeah.
on your to-do list that you know you're gonna get done right away, so.
Yeah, so I'm actually gonna, on that particular note that you had in your work plan and what you mentioned, I was gonna bring it as when we do our build task force updates, we were gonna discuss this, and I've actually prepared a draft motion for us to recommend his appointment to it, but we'll get to that, but yeah, it's, thank Chris for it's an
Being
interest.
so proactive.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll explain it later, like why it
Andy
takes.
thinks it and Chris doesn't.
Well, Andy just reads it out loud, and I didn't want to just sit here quietly and I actually just applied for that.
Yeah. You're just gonna bring that right to the top of the list.
Can I make a suggestion or a thought here, is that with the one here around the stress test, regulatory barriers, and maybe incentives, is that with this missing middle study that's happening, that you all, one of your goals here could be being an active participant in that study, and that may accomplish some of these things too.
Can you, I have a couple of questions, because I think it will help to understand, because I looked at, basically I looked, thinking of like what our flow is, and from Andy's list, and then from the staff's list. Can you just share a little bit of the timelines for what is up with the missing middle? When are the due dates on that? And then also from our, I know from our last meeting, things went to HED, things went to council. So there is currently a deadline set for applications for housing?
Yes.
Okay, so can you just share a little bit of that? That way we know the timelines of those, so we know what to work with. Because those seem like they're also gonna dominate, like whatever we want to plan, it feels like some of those are gonna really lead all of our focus for those meetings.
Well, I think missing middle, I think the project manager, who's Vidilis Advocate, is negotiating right now with our top choice consultant. When they negotiate that contract and have a signed agreement, they'll announce who that is, and then maybe start releasing some general timelines. I think that's going to take about a year, really, to do that full study. It's not a quick one and done. It's not a quick 3-month thing or anything. It could be less, I don't know, but it'll be during 2023 and maybe into a little bit of 24. Is that enough detail on that?
So is the RFP deadline over and they've
Well, yeah, we
received-
interviewed, I was
Okay.
on the selection panel.
Oh,
We
okay.
interviewed consultants,
Okay,
so we're negotiating with our top choice. right
okay.
now.
Were any local or was everything outside?
I think there were some local partners in some of the applications.
And that's happening through planning,
Planning
which is
and
why
urban
it's
design.
not on
Yeah.
on CD's work plan. having
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I could add it in there actually as kind of a aligned or tangential thing, because I am participating and I am, we will be participating in that.
I think that highlights one of the differences between CD's work plan and AHAC's work plan is there are affordable housing activities going on in
That we don't.
departments other than
Yeah.
CD that,
For sure,
Yeah.
that's
That-
true.
Would be helpful for us to
would be
know.
helpful for us to know
Yeah.
and track and
Yeah,
give input on.
For sure.
yeah. I just heard.
I don't know of
planning.
anything else I haven't told you about, though. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't want to hide things from you. That's definitely not my
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah, but maybe next time, maybe if that deadline has passed, then maybe we could have Vidila maybe next time kind of giving just a little update of like what's going on, because that would have been nice to know, like, hey, we may have asked to be on the selection committee or something, like, if we have been involved, and then we may have been asked for some guidelines on that, since it does affect so much of what we do. But for next meeting. And then I did hear like that department's about to go through a department head change.
Right, so I guess, I'll do some staff updates since I'm talking, but Todd Okolachaney is leaving the city this month, and he's going to Nashville, where he will be the deputy director of their planning department. So his last day officially is the 27th, but last real day is the 20th. So that is a change, but they've actually been staffing up. They have a new long-range planner who took my place, Kanda Tashoma, and they have a new business services person, Jamie Allen, who's local, actually grew up here, And then David Hazard has moved back into urban design there, back from capital projects. And then they have a couple more people they're hiring. So they're almost fully, but now Todd's leaving, but it's actually staffing up much, so they're a little bit more in force now.
Are they looking outside for a head of that department, or are they just going to promote from within?
I would assume so. I don't know. I don't think it's been announced. Ben Woody will be the interim planning director.
Along with interim assistant manager and.
He's permanent
Okay.
he's permanent permanent assistant city manager.
Good deal.
Mark Matheny is interim DSD director.
Okay.
I forget what
I
people
hadn't
don't
heard
know.
of it.
So, so Ben's pulled back from DSD, Mark's moved up, and, Housing Trust Fund, yes, we did open that up. Is that abrupt? I don't know. Deadline's February 10th, which we've aligned with Buncombe County's deadline. Ours is at noon.
Sorry, what was it?
February 10th.
February 10th, okay.
At noon. So if you have technical problems, we're there in the afternoon to talk to you.
And that is the deadline for housing
Grants.
Trust fund.
applications for the year? Is that how it's being?
For this cycle. We may do a second cycle later in the year. We have that option. We took your advice and said, okay, everybody needs to do an early assistance meeting, and I'm going to send out a reminder to people, because you could schedule those now, right? And I think we'll have applicants who've already got their zoning in place too. So, we changed the application form. It's on FormSite, which is like our CDBG home applications. I think it looks good. Made all the changes we discussed, and council passed on December 13th, that was, I believe.
And is this just Housing Trust Fund, or is this?
Just Housing Trust Fund. Luigi is on a rolling basis. My goal in the next couple months is to get an online application for that too. Not changing anything, rules, but just get it online so it's a little bit easier for staff.
I'm sorry, I'm just like, the reality of some of this old stuff sits in,
Sure.
like, okay, so we have, I know it moved from our last meeting, and then I know with the HED, and I know with the council, and then February 10th is not that far away. And and I have not, I'm asking about it with like the hat of a chair of a committee and as a developer, and I have not really seen it put out there in the public that much. So I'm just trying to think, what can we do in, us as a committee, and then what can the city do, this last thrust of hello, Housing Trust Fund cycle, applications are due in a month, and you need to get on an early assist, which means you probably need to put that, make your appointment today.
Yeah, I was going to I don't know how many of you are on that CD listserv.
No.
You're not?
Can you send it to the whole group?
Sure.
That we can send it out to our
Yeah,
clerks?
absolutely.
Okay.
We did put it out on the listserv, we did a press release, we did it social media, we kind of did our regular stuff back in December when it opened, but.
Because that's a big, that's a big thing, and then all of the staff changes you just discussed were pretty big. Did anyone know about Mark Matheny? See, these are some really big things, and I honestly only know about the planning director leaving because I built his house, and he asked me if I can help him find the trim that was put in the house years ago because his dog is eating it. So that's the only way I know that the planning director of the city of Asheville is leaving, is because I ran
Yeah,
into
it hasn't been
Yeah.
announced.
Yeah, okay. But that's, but these are big, these are really big changes, and then we have Ricky Hurley, who was a manager in, for zoning, who's went to Woodfin, and I haven't heard about that seat getting filled, and I know it's not directly under what we do, but it certainly affects all of this, and it certainly affects housing trust fund applications.
Right.
And,
Yeah, I think, I can get more information on that. I'm not sure all of what is going on in DSD, I'll be honest, but I know Nancy Watford has kind of taken over some of Ricky's duties, and so she's who I'm going to now if I have bigger issues.
Yeah, I guess, sorry, I'm just on bigger thing. I'm trying to think especially coming off this whole water situation with poor communication, how do how as we as the city get, like, these are some pretty big information pieces, and how do we make sure that this stuff gets out, especially those of us who are strong advocates that can help get the word around when roles need to get filled. But those are like planning director, development services director, zoning manager, assistant city manager. These are some big seats that have interim, so.
Well, I will definitely send you all a thing about the Housing Trust Fund, and if you can pass it along to people you think are interested, that'd be great. I do tend to think, we do know of at least 3-4 applications out there. You know, we know some people who are planning on applying, and so but those tend to be the bigger developments that, you know.
Is it, would it, I mean, it's not much time, but it's, what is, do you know, Chris, what is the current, like, if you wanted to get an early assist meeting, how far out are, like, in the past, it's been 2 to 3 weeks out. How far out are they booking?
They opened up right at the first of they got full at the end of the year. They opened up at the first of the year, but they're already, we've put in about 3. So I think they do 3 a week, 3 early assistants and 3 pre-app. So slots.
Well, we could maybe put in something about, contacting me or contacting staff if you're having problems scheduling, but.
I'm just thinking if like if it makes sense to put the word out, like a quick, before the application deadline, almost like a workshop, like a real quick workshop of how to submit a housing trust fund application. Because these are, especially with the new changes, like it feels like we kind of put the information out, like city council approved some stuff, but I haven't seen much information come out to the public in those. And I wonder if it would be valuable to have the same way like an RFP might have a meeting ahead to discuss the scope of it. If we might be able to put together a quick informational meeting about, well, this is how a housing, you know, this is some big changes, like taking all these rolling applications, putting them in one bucket, and then the pieces that we're looking for to have together before you submit your application. It feels like a good step might be.
Yeah, I'm happy to do something. We could do something in January. Maybe I'm in the weeds. I don't feel like the changes are that big. We actually made it more flexible in a lot of ways for people. Yeah. I think the only new requirement is the early assistance. And the only other big change is there's a deadline.
Yeah.
It's not a rolling basis thing. Yeah. So
I think that's the biggest.
We're not really asking for that. I don't think that much more new information than we were before. So.
Well, I think that the changes making it more flexible actually are part of the reason why communication is important, because there are people who may have, not considered applying who would be able and, able to be competitive.
We hate to direct everybody to you.
Right.
Because we know your time is very, very limited.
Yeah.
And being able to do some of these other things, but.
I think it helps that also, if we say, hey, we think this is a good, this is an example of this is a good, we as a committee think it might be good to have this meeting ahead, having been in the weeds of some of this process and knowing that there are changes, how we get the word out. And then as we have attention of, for a meeting like this, and for this and the HED to have some of the attention of different media who can help get the word out, now would be a good time to say, hey, we're gonna have a housing trust fund application workshop sometime in January. I think there'd be value in that. And I don't know if the next step is we as a committee make a recommendation that there should be. I mean, I'm just trying to think what do we need?
I don't think it has to be that formal.
Okay, but
yeah,
but that's kind of, it doesn't need to be that formal. But we're saying that's kind of in some ways that's the only way a collective voice of our committee gets heard if we make a motion. So I don't want to, I don't think it really needs to make a motion, but I think it feels like there's some collective important saying that imperativeness to getting this word out before that deadline.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying to you is I hear you.
Okay.
We can work on getting the word out, and we can work on doing some kind of workshop before the end of the month. Your recommendations go to council. Council directs the manager directs me.
Right.
I mean, it's a thing.
Yeah, I know. But how about this? If there's anything we can do to help get that, it feels like enough of us sound like it feels like it's an important enough issue, and saying that I don't think it's out in the development community that well.
Okay. And maybe I can also ask DSD to spread the word along there, because they do have a listserv of, I think they have some kind of mailing list down there. Not a listserv, but they do have a mailing list in addition. And I did on the website try to make sure, like the presentation we gave to council that outlines the changes is up. Like, hey, we made these changes, look at this presentation, you know, if you want to know what the changes are. So we did definitely, on the web pages themselves, try to make super clear, here are the changes, here are the things you need to do. Here are the top 5 things you need to know that have changed in the Housing Trust Fund. So.
Okay, so knowing back, to, kind of back with, like, let's say the work, your work plan and the work, kind of the work plan that Andy's kind of helped draft, of the timeliness that we say there's this missing middle, at least conversation of who's going to get this, and then the Housing Trust Fund applications will be coming in about a month and a half. How would any of the how do the needs align with what? Because when those applications come in, that's a good time to then review if the policies really work if the policies are working based on real life applications coming in. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to think, how can we look at put one of the items, like one of the reviewing the Housing Trust Fund policy in as a timeline based on once we get the applications in, so we can then see how they work real time?
Well, I think when we get the applications, we're going to be evaluating them and looking at how much money people should get and who gets money. We're going to be in the thick of that. We're not going to be looking at, I think the time to see if the policy works, I mean, it might be during a conversation about it, but staff.
That's what we're here today, to see if the things that we talked about that need to be changed will affect those applications coming in.
Right, but, yeah.
It was my understanding from the vote we took at the retreat that this round of Housing Trust Fund would be scored using the existing criteria, and that any changes that we wanted to make to the criteria going forward would not apply to this round. Is that, did I?
No, that's what we did.
Okay, we're not changing policy during an application
Right.
process. Like the
Yeah, it would
policy is what
strike
it
me
is.
that the easiest thing to do is wait till the awards occur and then do a postmortem on the
Yeah.
awards and the policy and say, did
Yeah.
the scoring criteria lead to the right recommendations?
Right.
And then make the adjustments for either
Yes.
the next cycle.
So the next cycle, we would use whatever we come up with.
Make a recommendation.
Sure. I don't, I mean, if we come up, yeah.
I mean, whatever.
Ideally,
any
yes.
Any changes that we might make to the scoring or whatever could
Right.
be used on the very next cycle.
Yes,
If it's
exactly.
June, July, whatever it happens to be.
Okay. How would you, so in the order, I'm just looking at this.
So let me just, like, since we're on the Housing Trust Fund topic, continue a little, just to lay that out for you all. So we get applications in February 10th. Staff will start, collecting that and looking at it, evaluating that. And then we will, we'll give like a very high level summary to HCD at their meeting in February. This is what came in. March at HCD, we will present those applications to them. Information only, just like get acquainted with these applications, understand the asks. What are your questions, HCD? Like really discuss it and let them think about it. And then at the April meeting, bring back a staff recommendation on the applications and awards, where they would vote, and then the idea is then go to the next council meeting. So by the end of April, we have awards that are in time for the tax credit deadlines and kind of lining up counties on their committee meetings aren't on the same days, but same schedule. And, we can present those to AHAC, maybe at your March meeting, first meeting,
that'd be
to
great.
say, here's what came in.
Yeah, I think here's what came in, how it was scored, and then from then we can take it on to starting to revise the criteria. Because once it goes to HCD or council and they start varying from the criteria based on their own judgment, that's kind of irrelevant to the scoring mechanism. Right? Because then they've gone off the scoring mechanism.
I mean, I think it goes to that postmortem idea that you said, like, we'll see how it all shakes out and what did get changed or what scoring things worked, what didn't.
Yeah. No, that would be interesting to say, postmortem, like to look at, like, this is what the guidelines were, this is what came in, and then this is what council followed those guidelines, didn't follow those guidelines
Yep.
to know it.
Or just, for us looking at projects and going, did something that we feel is higher priority not get as many points as it should have? So going back to Andy's work plan,
So is it good with you all if I add participate in the missing middle study to this work plan?
Yes.
Done you already?
It's a lot, so there's two documents in there. There's the DocX that Andy put in, which we don't, whatever. So I
So-
changed it into a Google Doc. So there's also a Google Doc in there, which is a live document. So I just changed it here. It's on the screen.
Yeah, it magically appeared in front of you.
Yeah, it's basically when you put a Word doc in, it'll create a Google Doc shadow to it, so.
Recommend revisions to HCD. What, I'm not sure what that means.
So that's, that's you're looking at my document.
Yep.
And that's just at the task level for each of those projects, because that is our ultimate output, is something that goes to HCD.
Sending them, but not
Yeah.
revising HCD.
No. Say, sending them something to.
I want that on our
overhaul.
plan.
Right. No.
Got it.
Yeah.
So those are all subsections of the Luigi policy.
Yes,
basically.
yes.
Right, yeah, under the Housing Trust Fund scoring and under Luigi and, our ultimate deliverable is something that goes to HCD for them to, consider and either adopt or.
Okay. And then what is on the staff plan, what is sorry, that document that went away, the term, when will staff be reviewing Luigi? I see winter, spring, so is it
Yeah, I think,
now, or is it later?
not yet, really honestly. I think we're going to talk to HCD just for 5 minutes about it in a couple weeks, about here's our general plan. I think in February I could bring you all a policy, kind of an outline of that process and get your thoughts on it. So, I think there's data collection, there's kind of evaluate what's happened so far with Luigi, and then there's stakeholder engagement, talking with developers, talking with community members, and then working on policy revisions. Learning from the HTF process, I'll just say that it feels like once we open up a scoring thing, it's hard to, it's really open. It's hard for people to just tweak, right? So I think it's going to take, I want to take a little bit more time. I don't want to be as rushed as we were with Housing Trust Fund and do it right, if possible. And that's where I will need some of your help.
So if we're going to look at on our work plan, so let's just take the Luigi section. So, and what I'm trying to think the order, because things have changed over the years. Historically, we would come up with recommendations, we would have discussions, we would then craft certain things, then it would go to HCD, and staff would and what's happened though is where a lot of our frustration was is we did all this work and then HCD would just pretty much change everything. So we were like, well, just tell us what to do because we don't want to spin our wheels anymore. So in the timeline of all this, I'm just thinking if staff was working on this, you're gonna present something to HCD with the idea they're then going to kind of ask for their questions, and then is that when? I'm trying to think when is the best part. Do we get engaged on the early side,
Yeah.
or do we want to wait until it's been some feedback from HCD because I think that's where everything changes. So we don't want to waste valuable time talking
I
about
see.
things that aren't going to be viable because we've
Well, I
done
guess,
a lot of that.
so the idea here was, so in January, the idea was having a discussion, here's the Luigi policy process generally.
Yeah.
What are some questions that you want to make sure we address in this process, right? So, and we know some of them from taking things to council, and I've got some more coming, we've got some more coming in February to council, so. We know that sometimes sustainability is asked questions. The voucher is the one that always gets asked, right? So there's certain things that always come up at council, and bedrooms. Those are the 3 things I can tell you right now, always come up at every council meeting. That's not to say that's all this is about, right? I've noticed some problems in the policy that I'm not excited about, and I think there's some questions, some financial questions for the city. and this is where conversations with developers really matter, is, I think for everyday lay people, when they see the amounts of the subsidies, they feel like we're giving away too much. And I feel like there needs to be a reality check of like, okay, this is what it really costs, this is, it's kind of like when we did the hotel community benefit, public benefits table. We really had to like figure out where's the balance and understand what's the reality of building something, how much it costs, all those layers. I mean, I think there was a change a couple of years ago where the number of points per year of taxes granted back changed. And so all of a sudden, we were giving many more years than we were before. So we've jumped, right? So all of the applications now are 17, 18, 20 years of the wage benefits. And I think there's questions of like, does this make sense? So I think there's some other data gathering. So I guess I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, Barry, but I think I want to keep you in the loop the whole time, and maybe some of this data stuff that Andy has here about assess the outcomes of Luigi-funded projects, project case studies. That's the kind of stuff we could do on the front end. Kind of like you were talking about, like with the scoring, you wish you'd had it earlier. It would make sense to do some of that analysis on the front end. We have that up front, and so we've been digesting it. So that makes sense.
So if we look at, I'm trying to just put rough, like, I just put March, June, September, I just put some kind of quarterly guidelines down here, so to more take this. So if let's just look at this March, is basically that would be the spring would then be the time maybe to review the house, like do this kind of post-mortem on the housing trust fund applications, and then.
No, the awards won't be done till April.
Okay.
So can't really do a post-mortem on something that happened.
Should make more sense to work on Luigi first then?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, slowly, spread out over time.
So
I don't want to overcommit.
one question I have for the group, though, is should we try to do this in this large session or use either one of our two existing working groups or another working group to like meet with Sasha, go into some detail, and then be able to bring to the group, a set of, here are some proposed, simple things we think everyone would agree in. Here are some points of disagreement on how things should be changed, so we can kind of get to a quicker discussion rather than trying to, everyone be given a policy in a meeting and then trying to just, quickly react to it. That could take us several sessions, and the majority of several sessions.
Do we want to ask, like what I'm thinking, part of our frustration has always been we do things and it goes and everything gets changed. And we've tried to now create more of a direct agenda link with HCD. If we are going to say we're going to work on Luigi first, do we almost ask HCD for the guidance first? Like, tell us what you want us to focus on. That way we focus on what we know there's support of rather than focus on things there's not support of. That's kind of what I'm asking, is like, do we kind of put we want to ask about what they think about Luigi first and then the Housing Trust Fund afterwards, and that way we focus on at least where we know there's some support.
Well, I think
and that's the ... next to Luigi on my work plan. Is I feel like, before we dig into anything, we need to know from HCD what the goal of the review of Luigi is, right? So that's kind of like, we know that looking at Luigi is something that HCD has said makes sense for AHAC to be involved in, right? So we know we have kind of the mandate to dig into this, and it's not going to be wasted effort. What we don't know is to what end, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing that we need to have clarity on from HCD before we dig into,
is it possible to poll all of council on their frustrations or issues they have with current Luigi policy?
Having been through many council changes and it's going to be a new shuffle, and then I think the next 2 months they're going to be so preoccupied with the water deal, what happened, that there's going to be so much energy and stuff going on with that I don't know. I mean, it feels like we have the opportunity, because we've now kind of set this connection with HCD. They're like, well, tell us what to do. So we're kind of saying, okay, these are the details, but these are the 4 overarching things. There's Luigi, there's Housing Trust Fund,
Right.
there's housing strategies and city-owned land, and ask almost in bites to go to HED in bites first, like, okay, we're gonna work on the weeds this quarter. What do you see as your priorities of it? That way we know our priorities align what we work on, because we wanna make sure we're working on things that there are support, even though we might wanna change some of that support, we
Right.
really don't, we have such limited time, we wanna focus on the things that we know there's support of.
Some of it's just in the way in which you gather the feedback. If you ask them to do a comprehensive review of the policy, that takes a lot of mental energy and a lot of time. If you ask them what's your frustrations with something, that's an easier thing, because you go like, I never get an answer on how many units there are, I'm always concerned the subsidies are too high, et cetera. I mean, those are
Right.
things people can do top of mind versus having to read the whole policy and redline it.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's easier to say, what do you find frustrating in the current Louise apology? And
Sure.
we go through the details
Sure.
as well as trying to address those frustrations, and then bring the whole package back. And I think you could do that with the whole council, because these things just go from HCD to the whole council, and they all have to vote on it, so.
So a couple pieces of information. So Finance Committee has moved, because right now the applications go to both HCD and Finance, and Finance Committee has changed their schedule. They are now the second Tuesday of the month, and they've changed their members. So it's the mayor, Kim Roney, and Maggie Ullman. And so next Tuesday, I'm out of town next week. Nikki is going to do a presentation for me, just like an intro to Luigi, so just to kind of introduce them. Even though the mayor and Councilwoman Roney have both seen these applications at council and probably are somewhat familiar, but none of them have been involved in a more detailed review, so we're going to do kind of an intro for them next week, and that would be maybe a chance we could ask that question, or if they have questions. I think it's a great role for HCD to play, to kind of be that. I mean, it's really frank. It could also be staff's job to ask that question. It's a good question, and I think that's part of our thing in 2 weeks, January 17th, is to say we're doing this process. What are the questions? And we could say, or your frustrations with this process. And if there's other, we could ask. We could work with the city management to see if we could ask maybe the chair to poll other council members for us. They are going to be subsumed with other work. I do think we know kind of just from those meetings what those issues are. And I think this is where they really do depend on you and value your input, because you do know the issues at a deeper level than they do. I really do think that's true. And the other thing I wanted to not forget to say is that in February, Rachel Wood, Assistant City Manager, said to us yesterday, some of the committees, there's a new council committee called Equitable Development, I'm not saying it right, equity, but in some of their committees are reporting to them and getting some time. So then the February HCD meeting would be a great time. We could have a slot for somebody from AHAC to come talk to them. It'd be a chance to have that direct communication. So we wanted to offer that to you all.
I'm sorry, can you go back a little bit? So there's a new committee that Rachel is heading? No.
Separate from Rachel, don't worry about
Okay,
Rachel.
so there's a new committee called Equity and
I'm not sure what it's called.
Inclusion?
Engagement.
Equity and engagement.
Equity Engagement, and what is the scope of that committee?
So they will have they've got several different boards and commissions. It's just a little bit of a, go ahead, Nikki.
I'll share an example. I don't know exactly what their scope, like I couldn't give the byline, but I know that, for instance, one component of our work plan that we're bringing forward to this committee is the SPF, right? So the Strategic Partnership Funds will cycle up through the Equity and Engagement Committee versus how it has previously gone to HCD. So that's just that's a case study, really, to just say that's the type of work that we'll be funneling up to EEC, is what our acronym is.
But it's a council committee, not a staff committee.
Correct. So there's 3 members of council that sit on the committee, and I can't remember who it is off the top of my head right now.
As long as we're talking about council and committee makeup and that sort of thing, are there any changes to the makeup of HCD?
No, it did not change, so it's staying the same. To address that issue of knowing what council wants and this kind of feedback loops, I think it was so helpful that Councilwoman Mosley was at your retreat.
Yes.
It fed so beautifully right into the council meeting. It was just very smooth because she was there, she got her input, she could tell the rest of council what you all said, you know what I mean? So I think it's all working much better than it was, so.
Yeah, I think we have pretty, I mean, especially with HCD, at least 2 of 3, we have pretty good we have good communication with, and I think that's why I feel it's, like, if I'm kind of looking at, I mean, the overarching work plan is, it's updating the affordable housing strategies from that 2008 plan. There's Luigi, there's Housing Trust Fund, and then there's kind of missing middle and city-owned land. And if we kind of put them in an order, that way maybe, to your point, Ryan, when we go to, like, maybe we can, if we're saying Luigi is what we want to work on first, we can, for, maybe the next HCD meeting, when they're, we'd set the standard that they're supposed to be giving us a little bit of direction, but we can pose it as that question, like, what are their frustrations with Luigi? What would they like to see changed? And that way we have a focus for the quarter of what we want to work on, knowing that there's some support on it. Because I think that's really that biggest thing. We want to make sure we're working on things we know there's some support of, and we're working on helping discuss some of those and add some in, but we don't want to be working on things we know there's not, because we just don't all have the time for it.
And do we want to work on that in general session, or do we want to do it in working groups? That was the other second question.
Well, one of the things we did last meeting, is we talked about the fact this scoring sheet, which we didn't really get to last time.
Right.
And that, to me, seems to be, I think that's a very, very important thing that we need to wrap our heads around and get our thoughts out, and so it can be part of that. We did not.
Well, this is the Housing Trust Fund scoring you're talking about?
Yes.
So that would be, we're saying like that would be a good thing to look at, not this first, not right, like we're saying the weeds first and then Housing Trust Fund second, once we can do the postmortem review of the applications, and then we can look at how the applications scored currently, how they would have scored with different matrices. So that, that would make sense for that to be kind of number 2, and then kind of the missing middle. It sounds like maybe we can get briefed on what's going on, but really the work of that is going to be a year long, so that could be more coming after the Housing Trust Fund review possibly.
I think it's going to be concurrent. It's going to be concurrent. It's on its own schedule,
Yeah.
so you have no control. No offense, you have no control over that. We just need you to participate, and we can figure out what are those roles.
Yeah.
It's not going to be as a full committee going, but it may be different representatives, or maybe there's an advisory committee that has an AHAC similar to the open space thing.
Yeah,
Or,
it's kind of like, I'm just trying to get it, like, remember, I mean, years before COVID, I mean, our work plan was basically, we had a calendar broken down by, this is what we're focusing on this quarter, this month, this conversation's taking 2 months, 3 months, and kind of that's all, from COVID, that's kind of fallen apart, and then also, all of the down payment assistance frustration was like, we all kind of like.
and I think we could today, if you all agree on these general items, then we can start working on calendaring. Let's not, I don't think we can do that all today.
Yeah, but it sounds like basically Luigi policy update, Housing Trust Fund scoring and policy based on review of applications that come in, the missing middle input, and then, with this overall arching update of updating that affordable housing strategy, the 2008 plan, and to kind of see how that, what is staff's, like, I don't know what is the process for, because that's a biggie, that's its own committee, task force works. What is staff's timeline for when you might tackle that?
Which, sorry.
Updating the 2008 plan,
I would really love to get an RFP out this year, in the next 6 months, and kind of get that going.
like to what, sorry?
An RFP, because
okay.
There's not enough staff capacity to do that on our own.
Okay,
And we
well,
do
that's
have-
new information, it's good to know.
Yeah, we do have some money set aside.
Okay.
We've talked about searching out some matching money from, another organization that would, get us a little bit bigger budget to get somebody to really help us do that.
So that's good information, because now, rather than, like before it was talked about staff doing updates, us giving input, now we're basically saying it's more likely that will be an outsourced RFP. So our input then would be for maybe helping to draft what we think should be an RFP.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, somebody, I don't know if that we do a big, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess that gives us at least somewhat of an order, even though some were simultaneous. And that was, that's kind of how we used to have kind of this, a calendar, and then we'd have the color, some things would definitely take 3 months, 4 months, some would take all year.
Sure.
But at least then we had discussion timelines, and then we would try to line it up with HCD input and meetings. So it sounds like, the Luigi would be first to try to get some input, to ask HCD at their next meeting, say, what are your frustrations? What is it you want us to focus on this? So, okay.
And I think, yeah.
Let's keep it. So I think, does anyone want to, besides those 4, what is it? I mean, any other kind of focuses we want to get on the overarching work plan that anyone wants to bring up? Where, I guess we're saying the 2008 plan update, Luigi Housing Trust Fund, and then kind of missing middle, making building easier / city-owned payment. I don't know if city-owned land is a separate thing, or that might, some of how that plays out might be affected by this housing trust fund cycle. I don't know.
Sasha, are you, on the missing middle, you're going to send us the most recent information, so we'll kind of understand where they are in the process, so when we would need to think about participating.
Right, I think when we have a consultant on board and we have a general, like a scope and a schedule, we can send, we can either send it to you or have Vidila come to a meeting, just when that's ready. Like, I don't want him to just come and,
Right.
not give you substantial information, so, and how you can plug in, and if there's going to be an advisory committee, we'll do that at the beginning.
But I would think as part of their work plan, it would be good to build in having a meeting with each of our 2 subgroups.
Yes.
Because there's been a lot of work done already on, things that would be applicable to their study, and it wouldn't be helpful for them to go and do a bunch of work and then us lob stuff in at the end. If they start
Sure,
at the
of
beginning
course, yeah.
and meet with us and see what have we done, and they may not choose to take all the recommendations or ideas we have, but at least they'll know them up front.
For sure.
So I would encourage for the city to require the consultant to schedule a meeting with each of the 2 subgroups. And it'd be an easier way to kind of get through it than doing it in a general session like this.
We will reach out to Vidila.
Yep.
Just to see when he kind of share the thoughts of our, that we have these 2 task forces that have done some of the background of this, and to see when he thinks would be a good time for him to present. If it's next meeting, the meeting after that, we can get some input from him for when he thinks. But I guess also, their department also will be kind of a little bit of a shakeup without a department head.
Yep.
It feels like we can move the city-owned land piece out of next year, just in terms of what's a reasonable workload, unless we think something significant is going to happen with either, with any of the existing city-owned, major, large city-owned sites in the coming year, or that we're thinking about, some kind of significant new land banking or site acquisition on the city's part.
Is that Nikki has something to say on this, or?
I would agree with that.
What's that?
I said I would agree with that, because we had set aside money in the bond for some planning, and obviously deed review is top of mind for me and for our team, but I think just realistically, we've got a good slate out in front of us, at least. I think if we were trying to get that RFP out for the housing strategies update, it could be next fiscal year before we look at doing some kind of planning and infrastructure investigation, looking at doing some kind of master planning for deed review maybe next fall.
But deed review, the actual complex is already in planning.
Right, this would be the city's
City-owned
portion of, I guess we should,
section. Maybe.
yeah.
The larger.
We'll name that something, Cedar Hill, the Cedar Hill.
Yes, that's better than deed review, because I'm going like, wait.
Yeah, in partnership with our,
Okay.
with.
So you're thinking in reality, so most likely there's really not city-owned land issues that will probably come up this year.
I think for us, it's really ensuring that 319 has liftoff,
Yeah.
right? So, because we're in conversations with them, they're doing their due diligence now, and I think starting work on design. I'm not quite sure where they are,
So
but
it
yeah.
seems like that's just stretching out, stretching out, stretching out. Is it just really taking?
Oh, no, I mean, it's following the development process, right? I mean, we got the city council approval, but now they're doing the work of doing the design, right? So
Right, so that takes 6
it's,
to 8 months.
it's just following that typical design build
Right,
process,
so,
yeah.
But the contract signed and everything, so it's a,
I don't know if we're there yet.
We're meeting when I get back.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still on the same page.
Yeah.
You know, I think
that
we're-
you work, okay, so
Okay.
contract.
But that's, again, so you can see how our work plan, right, shifts and ebbs with how to get these projects not
Yeah.
only through council, but then to the finish line,
Yeah.
so.
So it sounds like, to your point, Andy, it makes sense, the city-owned land, we really don't need on our 2023 plan, because if there's, other than 319, if anything comes up, we can fold it into Luigi Housing Trust. I mean, it will fold into something else. It doesn't sound like there's really time for you to really focus on that. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
What about launch the DPA program? Although we want to do that, is that really a realistic goal for 2023?
Is that on yours, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, the bottom of my list just had all of the things
Yeah.
that we've been carrying on the bottom of our agenda, you know. So,
I mean, we could just leave all of these things here and kind of say these are secondary goals and, you know, I mean, just so that council sees them and we can leave them there for
Right.
now and keep discussing them. Is that fair or?
Yeah, and it's something that, again, could, like, theoretically, someone could submit a housing trust fund application that involves a down payment assistance program. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I do see,
and if we're not, I mean, if we don't need to do a standalone program, the DPA that's already kind of defined within Housing Trust Fund is a really, it's a really viable option for someone to.
yeah, it also feels like there's been more, I'm hearing more and more about privatized DPA programs, like, so I think it's, I think it's, and also as far as like, for at least the next year, probably with interest rates, home ownership is gonna be so out of the reach of more and more and more that probably the city, us as a committee focusing on a city DPA program is probably not gonna happen.
That's
but-
why.
But yeah, I'm hearing, like, I know, there's two different private down payment assistance programs in addition to mountain housing that are floating around town now. But which is good, yeah, it's like, if the city can't, it's what we've always said, the city can't do everything, so it's good that there's people thinking creative how to solve gaps. Okay. Anything else on that list we want to, raise priority, lower priority, but sounds like the simpler the better.
I would agree with that.
Okay. All right, so we'll work on calendaring maybe those kind of, putting together those top 4 items. We'll reach out to HCD ask what some of their thoughts and frustrations are about Luigi. That way we have some input for our discussions, and then we'll kind of wait for.
I am gonna do that in January, just so you know.
Oh,
Just so I'm
okay.
super clear. Like I
Okay.
kind of said that a couple times, but like,
Yeah.
it helps me know what, I think in February, if you all come and present to them, we all have had a discussion about the Luigi policy process. And then if you have additional questions or discussion you want to
Yeah.
have with them, maybe we can, or if I find out certain things and you want to ask the question again, like,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah.
We can go a little deeper.
If you're teeing this up with HCD and Finance Committee in January, I mean, if you can just try to get clarity for us what role they would like, AHAC to play, what, again, to my sort of ... up there, what would we be trying to achieve with a revision of the Luigi policy that we aren't achieving with the current Luigi policy?
Yeah. And we've kind of set up, we've got to this point already where we said with the HCD, like, they're going to with this new committee's, structure, they're supposed to be giving us their guidelines and priorities so we can work on it. So I guess that's what, you can shepherd that, Sasha, for the next meeting. What is it they want us to work on about Luigi, so that way we at least have some direction on it.
I can see two different streams of, we want more developers to take advantage of Luigi because we want to produce more units. You can design a revision that goes that direction, and that's there's a public good at the end of that trail, and there's also, we want it to be, more equitable and create units that serve the hardest to house families, and there's a public good at the end of that road, but they're two different roads, right? So we need to know what the public good that they're looking for out of the revision, so that we spend our time, helping to go down the right road.
Okay, so we're good. We're good with kind of guideline for the work plan, at least these 4 items. We'll ask for some input, and we'll work on calendaring this, for the next meeting.
And I'll attach that to the annual report to
Yeah.
council.
So on the, let's move on then to annual report. The one, I think there was, Margie had a change she wanted to put on there for accomplishments, and then definitely one accomplishment I'd like to add on there is that, AHAC advocated for the creation of your position, the affordable housing officer position. We were part of the selection process for that, and we're helping to kind of craft, be part of what that position looks like in the city. But I think definitely that should be one of our major accomplishments, because we spent a lot of time and energy advocating for that and making that role a reality. Is everyone good with that?
Yeah, and I added Margie's last night to this document. So there's a PDF of the original, and then I added a Google Doc in there again, so we could edit it today. So really, the main thing we need to do today, quickly, if possible, and maybe it comes right out of this discussion we just had, or do you have, I would suggest 2 or 3 important policy recommendations to City Council that you want to make for the coming year as they go into their annual retreat and they're thinking about affordable housing.
Well, since we just basically worked on what we said, can we more say that rather than these specific policies, that we're recommending policies that update the Luigi and the Housing Trust Fund and the 2008 plan? That
Or are
essentially,
there specific things that come out of Build or Connect that we
For
want
like
to?
the smaller developer?
That we want to include in here. I'm also, there's certain things like changing some of the, single-family zoning. I know we're waiting, there's this notion we're having this missing middle study. We're going to wait a year for them to tell us you should get rid of the zoning. Like, why don't we just do it now versus waiting? Because every missing middle study you can research online says get rid of single-family zoning. So why don't we just get rid of single-family zoning now? That would be like one thing we could recommend. Like, why wait? Because you get down the road faster. You don't get down the path until you take the first step. And hiring a consultant is not the first step.
do we want to, I'm just thinking, because this could take out, we've got the overarching kind of Luigi Housing Trust Fund, missing middle, plan update. I wonder maybe if we have specific ones, since we have a little, rather than, wonder if we can submit them, because we can get there's suggesting that we drop single family zoning might be really hard to put on as a policy recommendation for us all to agree on. Or like the other thing that's come up in a lot of conversation is making that 80% more of a average than a hard line. So there's a couple of different things that have come up that all relate to Housing Trust Fund and Luigi.
What's the deadline for completing this document?
The 10th,
January 21st.
21st.
Has to be turned in.
So we could, theoretically, we could between now and then, we could we could task force meet, and each, how about that, do you want to do that, then each task force maybe recommends, each task force comes up before the 21st with a recommendation, one from Connect, one from Build? Is that?
Or they could do multiple. I mean, I don't think we have
Yeah,
to
like one
limit
of the
ourselves
ones
to one.
I think that we should consider is recommending to them that they start putting in escalation clauses into some of the policies, because we don't have any control over things that are happening in the construction world or in some, that we have to think about escalation clauses, and that's what, it's the out of control stuff that has to be
Yeah.
in there, that, so we don't get caught, but.
So, well, why don't we do that, because just for time, because we have to move on, but let's do that. So let's like maybe each task force can, that way we can discuss this, and we can have one that comes from Build, one that comes, and I mean, maybe there's multiple, but just as far as knowing, like the fewer items there are, the more attention they will get, so.
Does this not need to be voted on by the full committee before it goes to council?
I don't,
That's what I was sitting here thinking about.
I don't think
Do we do that by email after we
No.
put them together?
We never vote by email.
I don't think the annual report is never.
We're a public body, and
I mean,
there's
the
public
annual
meetings
report-
law, sorry.
The
I
annual
don't
report
mean
in the
to-
past has never been a vote item, ever.
It doesn't have to be. I've seen commissions not vote on them.
Yeah. So I think we could more say this is from rather than attribute to, we can say this is what this task force recommends, this is what this.
That would be cleaner,
That way it's
yeah.
cleaner. Is that?
Can we have a full committee policy recommendation then regarding the updating the affordable housing strategy? I think it would be nice, and that gives us a big umbrella to tuck a whole bunch of other things under. Make that since it's on our work plan, it's on staff's work plan. I'd move that we advance that as our policy priority coming out of the whole AHAC, and then with a single policy priority.
Is that a policy? I totally agree with you. I just don't know if that's actually what a policy, if that's a specific policy, but I agree with you that should be up there.
So the policy would be that the city adopt a comprehensive housing framework or comprehensive housing strategy, replacing the 2008 affordable housing. I mean, that's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone is, I don't know if, do we need a real vote? I mean, or just, we can show, are we all in support of that being?
Yes.
Do we have a quorum still?
1, 2.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Do we need since it's not, do we need that as an actual roll call vote, or?
I would love it.
Okay, let's do. Okay.
So the motion would be that we recommend the adoption of a comprehensive housing plan, and then that we're adopting.
She's got like stuff there for you.
Yeah, an additional policy recommendation from each AHAC subcommittee, or not subcommittee, working group. I mean, I feel like we as a group need to say that that's how we're gonna do this.
Yeah, sure. See what you're saying.
In the motion.
Yeah. So you're saying, yeah, so AHAC, like her motion, AHAC recommends that the city move forward, updating the 2008 affordable housing plan and develop a comprehensive affordable housing plan. And that each of the each of the task force, I think that's their term, each of the AHAC task forces will provide a recommendation to go along with our annual report. Is that what we're saying?
So moved.
Okay. Second?
I second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
So each of those task force will get me their recommendation
Correct.
before the 21st.
Correct.
Awesome.
All right, and And then the work, as far as the accomplishment updates, you're gonna add on about the open space, and you're gonna add in about the advocating, the creation, selection committee, helping craft the position. Yeah.
Yep, I did.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I want to get quick, I mean, there's updates and reports, but one thing I wanted to.
Sorry, do we need to add the statement around the budgetary impact of the recommendation?
I can take care of that, if that's okay.
Okay. Just make sure you ask for enough to get that comprehensive plan work done.
Yeah.
So one thing I do want to get to before we get, just to make sure we get in, so I just want to move up on the updates and reports there on the build task force. One of the things I wanted to bring up is, because I have a motion I wanted to kind of bring along with this, that, during the build task force, one of the things that came up was about MSD from our discussions of having Kevin Johnson there. We learned about them not being able to extend their own lines. We were all shocked about that. We have already attended some MSD a board meeting on and a planning meeting on. We advised some of the board members who didn't even know that they couldn't do that. So one of the things that's happened is there's an open seat on the MSD board. We've advocated for Chris Day to apply, which he did. And what I would like to do, if we could, is I have a motion prepared to us offer our support for that. And one of the things why this is timely is it's a January 10th. And I did a little bit of background checking on this. It was advertised as an open seat, but historically, both seats, the city has 2 seats on the MSD board. Historically, it's been the mayor and a council member. And so it has to be, at least, I think it has to be the mayor. And then historically, it's been a council member, but there's nothing that says it has to be a council member. The city is allowed to designate someone else for that second seat. So because Councilwoman Whistler's left, and I think she had that seat, that's opened up why the seat was advertised, even though it kind of in the past has just been a council-appointed seat, but it doesn't have to be. I clarified this with Jerry this morning. We've clarified with some council members. So offering our support is a strong statement for this. So I prepared a motion. It says I ran it through with Chris ahead. During meetings of the Asheville Affordable Housing Advisory Committee Build Task Force, it was discovered that Metropolitan Sewer District has in their charter language that prohibits the district from proactively extending their sewer main lines. Recognizing that adequate sewer infrastructure is essential for the creation of additional affordable housing, AHAC hereby recommends the appointment of AHAC member and civil engineer Chris Day to the currently open seat on the MSD board to help advocate for ways MSD can better support the creation of new affordable housing, including exploring changes to the charter that would allow MSD to extend their own lines.
Yeah. So,
Moved it over.
Okay.
motion?
You have to mention.
I'll second that,
So a
yeah.
second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we now have our meetings recorded rather than minutes, does actually something go to council that says they did this?
Yeah, this will.
Okay. So
Yeah, that's
something
why-
in writing goes to council specifically saying,
Yeah, that's why the strength of this, that we'll basically have an action item on this. We have a motion that's drafted. We'll send this, we'll send this on to the boards and we'll send this on send this on the council members, they'll know, but the next discussion, the first discussion of this would be next week or whenever, the 10th at boards and commissions, and then it goes to council.
okay.
Yeah.
So Sasha, do you do this, or is this something that Barry, make sure that HCD gets it, sees it?
I don't think HCD has anything.
Boards and
I'm sorry,
Well,
Oh, sorry, yeah, yeah.
We'll make sure.
I can let the assistant city clerk know. 'Cause
Yeah.
she, we make sure that boards and
Yeah.
commission gets it. When I first got this, I didn't realize it was a motion to city council. I thought it was to MSD itself. And
It's to boards, and it's
okay.
it's an internal one. I mean, it's to the city.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, but historically, just as an example of kind of what a chair does, there is a lot of this lobbying and connecting the pieces staff's doing some stuff, but there's the personal touch towards making sure the right people get the right things and the right words, and that's kind of what some, what I've done as chair, and other, I mean, it's not just me, there's other chairs, and there's a lot of advocating that happens. I mean, the planning board and others there's a lot of this, and that's kind of what some of that back roads are. So, but thank you all, and thank you, Chris, for applying. I think he needed something else on his plate.
I was gonna say, he needed something else to do.
And then, is there any updates you want to do from Connect Task Force, or will?
We did not meet in December.
Okay. All right. Updates from,
I'm a little underwater today, but I'm leaving town tomorrow, but I do have 2 Luigi applications going to HC in January, and then they will be going to finance after your next meeting, and I could give you more information then, but basically it's the 46 Aston micro units project, which is 231 apartments, 47 affordable, it's 20%. They get the application scores well, just once you're in the CBD, and if you're near the transit center and you're near schools, I mean, you just score really well automatically is how
These are all one-bedroom, tiny micro
I
units.
wouldn't call them one, but yeah.
Yeah. they're not
Efficiencies,
one-bedrooms. They're
basically.
Even less than an efficiency, closets.
Yes.
So are we still going to look at it as if it was a 3-bedroom apartment and the amount of subsidies that it can get? And then we talked about that from the
Yeah.
last one, that it got a
Right.
lot of money and there was a lot of,
sounds like that would be something on our work plan that comes up when we
yeah, I
discuss
mean, I
the
brought it up
wage.
several
Yeah.
times. I don't.
Yeah.
think
I know, and
fair,
it's
so-
difficult, and I've kind of done a lot of prodding about it, and I'm gonna, actually, I've been having some conversations with housing authority staff around voucher holders and what kind of units they're looking for, and just, again, with that whole 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom thing,
Because I think he was planning on renting these units for like $1,000 a piece.
which is actually, for efficiencies under our table is about right.
Remind me again how big they are, I think like 330?
200 square feet.
Up to, some are 3, some are 3, even some are 400, but yeah, they're all pretty small. And I think to me, that's the one question of fairness, like, if you wanted to have a lower rent kind of line for that. And I'm hoping to have a conversation with David Nash around, we've got these other projects, the Ramada and the Days Inn, which will probably have similar size units, and what is what are the rents being paid there? And if they're similar, or if they're low, I'm curious. Because I think that would be one data point that could be helpful.
Yeah, those are bigger units, they're all in the 400 square foot range.
400 range, yeah.
That's when I was reading about this in the paper months ago, and I thought they were in the 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a typical micro unit size.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's something that as they go through and decide how much I don't know what he's asking for.
When is his application, did you say? When is that up?
It's going to HCD in like 2 weeks.
Okay.
Is this the thing with the shared kitchen?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we did some digging back in the fall and determined that it does, I don't want to get into the weeds with you all, but it does fit everything we thought it did originally with the first project. So,
And there's one theoretically, one's been approved already for
Yes.
usage. So there's like
Yeah.
that's why I think it's a good policy discussion that come up, but it seemed like it would be hard to turn something, it'd be hard to turn something down that they've just approved without any policy changes like that.
Yeah, there was just a lot of outcry from
Yeah.
the people that said, wait a minute, they don't have playgrounds, they don't have pools, they don't have any of these other things that we have provided for, in other complexes. And so basically, it's shared kitchens, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
I don't know how to feel about it, honestly. I don't know. Do these exist in other cities?
Oh, yeah.
they do exist in other cities, but I think it's unique to Asheville because we don't have like in Washington State where they happen to be, and in Nashville where there's all these big mega corporations that have lots of young people that are making decent salaries, that have lots of restaurants and all this kind of stuff to go eat at. and lots of transportation, that's not exactly,
Not our situation.
not our situation today.
It's kind of an untested concept in the
It
market.
is an
And that-
untested
I mean, the
concept.
closest that I can think of in the city was the conversion of the Hiawassee. Like it was the hotel on 240 was a conversion from hotel rooms to apartments and
Condos. Yeah.
And they're a little bit bigger, but essentially they're hotel rooms. And so that's probably the most similar, but the biggest difference, I think, what makes it controversial is the Hiawassee was a motel and had parking. And this does not have parking, but there's not required zoning wise. So I don't know, it's untested, but I don't know, there's so many, again, when it comes, like we're talking here about down payment assistance, the city couldn't make a down payment assistance program happen. So we've got nonprofit groups coming in, we've got private sectors trying to come up with it. And it might not be as great as what the city could do, but when we've got anybody trying to create more housing stock, even if it's tiny, the market's gonna prove whether it's viable or not. But
Yeah, but there's a difference whether the market creates it or it only creates it because the city enables it through tax.
Correct, yeah.
Through tax subsidies. So I'd be fine if it was just the market, but it's not. It's taking city resources to get it done.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think for people who, because we have a shortage of land to build apartment complexes and we have a shortage of housing units, we're gonna end up with people who have vouchers in these 200 square foot units, which is not really adequate housing for someone.
Well, there's no families that can move there. I mean, that was another outcry.
Well,
But single
you can't do that,
occupancy
though.
Units are one of the big
Yes.
needs, right?
Yes.
We-
And I've been following some of that conversation with vouchers and the housing authority and why do people return units, return vouchers, people who can't find units, they tend to be one bedrooms or this or that, and I didn't really get to the bottom of all of it, but one bedroom unit vouchers get returned at the highest rate of all the returns. People, and apparently pets is a big barrier. It's a huge, the number one barrier is what the person who works with these folks said, is pets. They can't find places that'll accept pets. Sometimes it's people need ground floor units, so accessibility is an issue. Some people, she said, have just a clear, if they're already living in public housing and they have a voucher, a mobility voucher to move, they have a super clear idea about what they want and they're not willing to.
And of course, these again.
Veer from that.
Keep bringing up to the shared kitchens, which is depending on, that may not work for a lot of people if they have specific needs. And
I think it's something that if we're going to talk about the Luigi policy first, that's something that can be discussed, but
For sure.
I don't know, it's like,
So that's one. What's the other one?
The other one is 157 New Leicester Highway, which is kind of a more traditional suburban apartment complex, 141 units, 29 affordable for 30 years, and a little bit higher subsidy they're asking for.
all right. And you said those are next?
They're going to HCD in January, and I apologize for not bringing more information to you, but I can bring you more in February if you want. They will be going to Finance and Council on February 14th.
Yeah, I guess we'll see they'll have a public, the Luigi application, I guess the one will be discussed at HCD, so we'll see this will be an interesting thing to see. I guess this will be an interesting thing, like here we're asking HCD to kind of tell us what their frustrations are with Luigi, and here they're gonna have this application in front of them, so we'll get to really gauge, what do they feel about it?
Right.
So that'll be some good real-time feedback, like about the small units, like if they have a big conversation about it, or if they don't have a big conversation about it, but, yeah.
And, yeah.
All right.
And,
Is there something
I was
else?
going to say, they could continue it and just say, we don't want to make a decision now until
Yeah.
we get some policy change. He's already gone through his planning process. He's already got his zoning. It's not a council. I don't know.
It's not conditional zoning or anything.
No.
like that, No, so it's.
Yeah.
it's-
Well, I also think it's a question of whether they would continue to build it if they didn't get it. I think they will.
Right.
So I think we're throwing
That's a
money,
great
I think we're
Yeah.
throwing money away on a project that is going to get built anyway.
This is not, but just about another project. And is there, the project that's going on Ashland with the parking garage, that's.
Tribute.
Is that?
Stopped.
That's what my question is
What
about.
is-
Is that-
what's going on
is
there?
that
I haven't had a conversation with the developer. It was in the paper.
Yeah.
I think John Boyle did something about it. Apparently, it's on the market.
Yeah. Is that one we
I'm
have?
sorry, I couldn't hear what you were saying. It's on the market?
sale.
It's for
For
sale.
sale.
Unfinished.
Is that, I don't even recall. Is that one we have okay.
There's a Luigi in that
Okay.
project.
Okay.
And I think what I'm hearing is that they just don't have the money. It's just so astronomically expensive and everything's gone up and they can't.
Okay. So that is, yeah, that's what I've kind of heard. But I think why I kind of wanted to ask about that is like, obviously it's a city, there was some city funding discussed. My understanding was it's kind of a site work issue, and it's something just to keep in mind, because this recurring site work issue comes up all over town as we're going to be discussing, 319, that's probably, it's a recurring issue in town about all of our poor land conditions and how it leads to,
I would say
project
Cox
work.
Avenue is a special case a
Cox
little bit.
Avenue is, historically downtown, I mean, there's been so much redevelopment of downtown and how it's changed over the years. There's always surprises underneath. I think I don't know all the details on the one on Cox Avenue right now, but the site work, I think they've gotten it now. They got a lot of surprises and spent a lot of money on surprises, but I think they've got it now to where they feel comfortable if someone else wanted to step in because
They can do it.
their fatigue on it.
So what is the city's position on something they've given so much money to?
We haven't really given them
Well,
anything.
not yet. It's just, I
The
mean,
conditional zoning goes with the land, so if
Right.
somebody else has to come in and do the same project, or they come back
they
and,
have to do it.
Yeah, and deed restrictions are there, and so, yeah. If somebody came in, bought it, and wanted to take those restrictions off, they'd have to come back through
Okay.
the process.
I was just looking, because I've heard some rumblings about it, and I know there's some city funding, so that's kind of, the talk is it's stalled for the time and it's on the market. Right.
How big was that project again? How many units?
488,
488,
490.
490.
97 or something.
had
So I think it was
almost
like
50
40 some.
affordable, 47 affordable.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, I'll just kind of wrap up. Some about the housing data, there's links to it. You can look through to see kind of the trends of the houses under 375, and there's nothing dramatic changing yet. Like there hasn't been a big market shift. There's just a slowdown. It's also seasonal, so I'm really interested to see what happens with spring. But I thought the data I thought the reports the inventory would be increasing faster than it appears to be, but it does not appear to be. But you feel free to look at it. There was some interesting stuff in there. Skip over.
I was just going to say, yesterday's paper, there was a great article that the county did. It was a total review of all 14 projects that the county has approved and the number of units for the county going forward. So if you haven't seen it, you should definitely take a look at it because it was pretty impressive. It's like 2,250
Yeah,
units. It was a great article.
it was a good article. I was actually thinking, because that was specifically ones that the county has approved, I thought that
Yes.
would be, I was gonna ask, because if the reporter can do a specific one for the city, like what would, because it was what county approved, it wasn't specifically what the city approved, and I
Yeah,
was
just
gonna
county.
suggest that they do that same wrap-up for what was approved in the city, and it may be in the works, but,
Are we talking about just housing permits or affordable housing funding?
No, they actually went project by project, location, number of units.
It was just a pure number of
Entitlements,
units.
entitlements
Thank
for
you.
the
Entitlements,
projects.
yeah.
All
Everything.
units.
yeah,
For all the units, yes.
yeah.
Front
And-
page of the paper.
Yeah, they did some good research analysis. I mean,
they did.
Yeah. Okay, and then on events, I guess there's an event January 25th. It's the at Harrah's joint meeting of council and city commission. So if any of you want to attend, sounds like it could be helpful. Anyone know any other information about that they want to share?
I mean, the Dogwood Health Trust funded this study. The
Okay.
National Alliance, they've been in town several times, have done a big, kind of a comprehensive study and are going to have recommendations about where we should be heading with homelessness issues. And so for people who are really concerned about that, I think it's, and it'll be both the council and the county commission meeting together.
What's the deadline for, when are they supposed to actually start construction on Shangri-La on the Ramada Inn?
I'm not sure. I know they're kind of in their permitting processes and stuff.
I think they were targeting February 1st.
To actually start site work?
Is the needs assessment online yet?
Which needs assessment?
The needs assessment
Oh,
being
I
presented
don't
at the
know.
end of the month? Okay.
No.
I can ask and send it to you all when it gets
Sure.
released.
If you can, thank you.
Do we have any public comment received?
No.
That fell asleep.
Any public comment out there? All right. Thank you. With that, we're adjourned.